We're good to go.
Hello everybody, welcome to Exec Scrutiny, 1st of December 2025. We'll crack on. Are there any apologies? Yes, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, Councillor.
No problem at all. Okay. Councillor Bonser. Late items, don't believe there are any. Declarations of interest. Okay, the minutes are attached from both the 4th and the 10th. Are there any matters arising from those? Yeah. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I gave my apologies. It's not listed. Thank you.
Okay. Can we have that? No problem. If we can make a note of that. Don't want your stats to be skewed on the website, do we, Councillor Wright? Yes. Okay, the forward plan, as always, is attached. I don't think it's changed at all, really, from the last time we met. Obviously, we have the option of horizon scanning this and asking for more detail to be brought to the board. I don't think in this case, unless anyone's got any... Oh, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, just nearly 12 months ago now, when we were discussing parking in the city, it was announced that there was a parking review taking place, and I think that would be suitable subject for scrutiny and probably this board. So I just wondered where we are with that and whether it's likely to come to this board in the near future.
Thank you. So I suppose that strays really into the next item, because I would expect that to go through the relevant scrutiny board, OS board. I don't know if there's any leeway. Is there any anchor there in the forward plan where we could possibly ask for that? Or is it more that we're going to be asking potentially a specific overview and scrutiny board to have a closer look at that? We'll just have a look at that a second. Councillor Kerr.
I'm thinking that the parking review is something that was being done alongside planning, and it might not actually end up anywhere except going into sort of the planning of the city centre. So it might not go anywhere unless it's specifically requested, or it could go to the planning committee if they wanted to talk about it. I was going to raise the fact that, okay, this forward plan is getting quite old, but of the new items that were added in November, 2 of them are now coming to this meeting. So again, we've got very little notice, and something like, well, either the allocations policy or the waste management processing of food waste, they're both things that could have been in the forward plan a lot sooner, just for transparency. And I couldn't see an item here relating to the Rolls-Royce issue that we've got later on. And as it's there, I presume it must be on the next forward plan.
Okay, I have to note that. That'll be the next item. Councillor Wright, we're going to have to check on that, because I think it's sound in the next item, which we'll talk about, to refer it to a specific board. I'm just not quite sure what remit we've currently got to pull something from the forward plan. But Councillor Kerr's point is valid, of course, that unless it's in there, you know, we aren't going to be able to actually ask for more information and get potentially the cabinet member and officers here to have a closer look at it. So the point about making sure that we have a good amount of information in that forward plan also needs to be noted as well.
So, Chair, Councillor Wright, you called it the parking... What's its overall title?
It was, when it was discussed, it was called a parking strategy. Yeah. But speaking to local businesses today who are being consulted on it, it's been referred to as parking review, so it could be either.
Okay.
Thanks. Probably I'll go back and speak and see whether it's something that comes here or whether it's something that's going to go on the forward plan or whether it's something that's going to go to a specific board. I think we need to...
I think the point we're making is that we would have expected it to be on
Yeah.
Horizon scanning document, and it's kind of come as a curveball, and what we're seemingly keen to do is ensure that there's some scrutiny of that and some oversight. Yeah. So moving on to item 6 then, this is where we do have details of what the various overview and scrutiny boards are looking at, planning to look at, and we can make recommendations, if we please, to ask the chair of those relevant committees to overview and scrutiny boards to have a look closely at an issue. Councillor Wright, would you suggest that that's something that the relevant board would like to look at? Would you prefer to wait for a response from the officer about where we're going with that?
I thought that was me for a minute. There is a regeneration board, isn't there? Or yeah, so it might be that, or here. I've got no particular preference.
Well, I mean, I'm on that board, so if you leave it with me, I'll make sure that I speak to the chair and vice chair. There's another issue that I wouldn't, that I want to speak to them about as well. So if you leave that one with me, if that's okay, I can have a word with them. Is that okay? Yeah? All right, we'll see where we are. But we do need clarity on that as to which pathway it's taking for scrutiny. If people are being consulted on it, then I'm not aware that we've been looking at it until this point.
I'll get a response, Chair, and circulate it to all members of the committee so that you're aware what the pathway is.
Thank you. Item 7 is our recommendations, and let's have a look. So, Council Cabinet meeting November 2025. So you can see the Council Cabinet minutes if you want to know the full details. The scores on the doors this time, one was accepted, extension of delegated approval of affordable schemes. Draft local plan, rejected, and Q2 performance report recommendation was accepted. So 2-1, Councillor Kerr.
And if we'd had the 4th of November on the chart, that would have been accepted as well. But the 4th of November meeting is missing.
It is. So we've done quite well, really. So we don't always get rejected. I think that's the thing. But if you want to know the details and you can't remember what we actually put forward, it's in the minutes. Right, moving on. Council Cabinet agenda for Wednesday, the 3rd of December. So moving to the relevant items that we're going to be looking at. Key decisions. So it's item 9, starting there. Allocations, policy extension. I'm not quite sure who's doing... Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is requesting an extension to the Derby housing allocations policy. We were actually looking at doing a deeper update of the allocation policy, but we then noted with LGR coming into place, we are conscious that there will be a wider allocations policy that will need to be drafted. So it was chosen, or it was recommended then, that we would actually look at extending the existing policy, but making statutory changes, and those have been included. So our proposal is to actually extend the policy to March 2028 and to approve the regulatory amendments identified in paragraphs 4.8 and 4.9. We do actually have to have an allocations policy, but there is no specific time limit. We are just required to make sure that we are keeping it up to date and that it is compliant with regulations. So we did actually look at our other options and we looked at it and said, well, as well, it meant there was IT infrastructure changes that were needed, so it didn't seem a prudent use of the finances to do those changes for a policy that was actually going to be quite time limited. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'll kick off. It's more of a sort of practical kind of question from me, really, or questions. So have we spoken to our potential partners in the new local authority about how they're dealing with this as well? Is it a case of how much dialogue is going to be going on already to 2028 about alignment. How is all that going to work? Because obviously at some point there's going to have to be, assuming LGR goes ahead and the new LA is put into place, you know, how is that going to be merged? Any idea at the moment? Any dialogue at the moment?
We're not currently having dialogue with all of our neighbouring authorities because at the moment we don't know how Derbyshire is actually going to be split. So what we will be doing is once we've got that information, it is something we will be looking at the policies across all of the authorities, and we will then look to see which ones and how similar they are. So where we've each got our common themes, and then we can start discussing the changes and how we can implement them, and also looking at the IT infrastructure that they have got to see what changes they will or we will need to make to the IT. So no, at the moment the discussions are not ongoing, but they will be starting in the coming months.
And just following on from that, obviously it's very early days, and it's to be seen how everything pans out in terms of local government reorganisation. Do we have any ability to look at how? Is there any other examples of where a larger local authority has been created and how they manage this kind of transition? Are we going to learn lessons from that, or maybe gain some advice as to how we could actually form a much, it's going to be a far larger geographical area, so obviously it's going to be far more complex and far more larger population, etc., etc. So again, it's probably early days, I get that, but is there any dialogue in terms of that? Any thoughts about reaching out to see best practice, to see how we can learn from that journey that other people may have already taken?
I understand that discussions are happening about that at a chief exec level and director level. It is something that we will be doing, and as it cascades down, that we will be undertaking those, because there are other authorities that have actually gone through this process, so we will be looking at lessons learnt.
Thank you, and I do appreciate it's very premature, but obviously 2028 is going to come very quickly, as we all know. So yeah, it's important to obviously try to prepare as best we can. Councillor Rawson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do think this is the most sensible approach, really. We know this is coming, and to implement one policy and then for it to all potentially change again within a couple of years is disruptive, to say the least. So I think this is the right approach. A couple of questions. One in terms of the future authority, obviously in a bigger area, and would we be expecting people across that area to have the same access to social housing? So, for example, people in Derby being able to apply and be eligible in Ilkeston or Swadlincote and vice versa, and what implications that might have on our housing stock in the city. And secondly, for any opportunities to make any small changes to the policy between now and then. So, for example, in terms of eligibility for bungalows, I think at the moment it's anybody on a disability benefit is eligible, when potentially it's people with mobility issues that would perhaps be best targeted. So are there any opportunities to make tweaks to the policy between now and the end of the transfer over to the new authority?
At the moment, we don't know how the policy will work across, but seeing as we would become a single area, I would presume that it will be envisaged that it will be across the whole area as opposed to sub-regional. But we would need to assess the impact on all of the housing stock. But that does also then potentially give residents of Derby the opportunity, if they wanted to move out into the neighbouring areas. It gives them that, so it would be two-way migration. With regards to making sort of minor changes to the policy, because we're just doing statutory changes at the moment, we don't have to consult on that. Any other changes that would significantly or would impact the policy, we would then have to undertake a full consultation exercise. So that was why we have just at the moment left it with the regulatory changes.
Councillor Kerr.
It's a small point, Chair, but I think for clarity, it would be good if, when it's discussed on Wednesday, it could be made clear that the allocations policy would be up to the end of March, rather than up to March. And also, I think we need to make clear that we are approving those regulatory amendments now. So it would be approving the existing policy as amended up to the end of March. So I just think that's something that officers could just make sure is clear at Cabinet, so it's not queried later. Otherwise, I think this is a sensible direction to go in, and it shows how LGR is already making an impact.
It certainly is. Are you happy just to take that as a note?
Yes, I can do.
You happy with that, Councillor Kerr? Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be dealing with this a lot, and policies. Some things, obviously. I mean, it says here that a new allocations policy covering the new geographic area from April 2028. So I assume that things like this will probably have to have a more wider policy, but I'm sure that there's going to be lots of things running in parallel as well, depending on services provision and all sorts, that it won't just be one big bang. I expect that will be probably Derby City, or not Derby City by then, but you know what I mean. There'll be one policy maybe for the city as it gets merged, I don't know, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. We'll see how it progresses. Are there any other any questions, queries? No? Thank you very much for that then. We'll move on. Okay, item 10 then, provision of contract for food waste management and processing. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks approval for the procurement and subsequent award of a contract to an external service provider for the management and processing of food waste. A contract is required to provide the Council with a tipping location for food waste collection vehicles, as well as for the processing of collected food waste from the 31st of March 2026. This is mandated by the Government's Simpler Recycling Policy and the Environment Act 2021. The Council currently collects food waste from homes across the city. Usually that's mixed with garden waste in the brown bin, which is collected for composting, or it's combined with other household waste and placed in the black bin, which is disposed of typically at energy from waste facilities. From March 2026, the Council will have a statutory duty to collect food waste separately on a weekly basis from all homes across the city. Source segregated food waste will be a new waste stream collected by the Council, and therefore new arrangements are required to manage this. This will include a local tipping destination for our food waste collection vehicles within the boundary of the city, as well as the capacity to recycle this material. Food waste will be treated by anaerobic digestion. This is the most sustainable option, which represents the most positive outcome in the waste hierarchy for food waste processing. It's also one of the cheapest options available for managing waste generally. The contract will have an initial term of 2 years, commencing in March 2026, and there will be the opportunity to extend that contract by further period or periods of up to 3 years. In terms of stakeholder engagement, some high-level informal engagement has been carried out with service providers, and we've also considered published best practice to help shape the specification and ensure it reflects industry standards. The contract value is expected to be around £750,000 over the full term. And in terms of other financial and value for money issues, disposing of food waste in the black bin costs almost 6 times more than recycling it via the new food waste service will cost. So from a disposal perspective, anaerobic digestion is by far one of the cheapest and most environmentally beneficial methods available. So we should be encouraging this to improve the efficiency and reduce avoidable costs to the community. There will also be reduction of costs seen elsewhere across the service, as from March 2026, once the food waste service commences, it means we can compost the garden waste collected in the brown bin differently, which will reduce the cost of processing that waste by an estimated £240,000 a year. At section 9, there's the climate change impact assessment. This considers only the disposal element of managing and processing food waste, as separate assessments have been carried out for other elements of the new food waste service. The new scheme is estimated to divert around 4,800 tonnes of domestic food waste per year from disposal. Positively, anaerobic digestion treatment will generate renewable energy, produce a natural and quality digestate which can be used in place of chemical fertilisers, and is expected to reduce carbon emissions. The contract also aims to deliver wider social, economic and environmental benefits. Overall, the processing of food waste by AD is expected to realise more positive outcomes. In other significant implications, the overall contract term has been considered in line with the government's timeline for LGR. The initial term will provide security and stability whilst the new structure for local government across Derbyshire is established. And the extensions will allow us to review the need for the contract in line with any changes resulting from LGR. Overall, this procurement is essential to support the transition to a service which will comply with the government's simpler recycling policy, as well as offering environmental and financial benefits. Does anybody have any questions?
No, thank you. Councillor Kerr, I know you have. I didn't need to put your hand up. If you want to go first.
Thank you, and thank you for highlighting some of the benefits of moving like this. The conversations I've had with people about this have been twofold. One side are saying, oh, it's too much faff, can't be bothered with it, I don't want to do it, I've got enough waste containers in the kitchen already, sort of reaction. And the other side has been, when you talk through why we're doing it, is actually much more positive. And I think it's very important that people understand that the council is doing this not for itself or its convenience, but for the world, basically, and for sustainability. And I think that if it is sold in those terms, people are more likely to make an effort to engage with the new system. Otherwise, I think there'll still be a lot of kitchen waste going in brown bins, or people just continuing to put them into black bins. And it's not going to be easy to change that. So, as I think that's so important, Chair, I've suggested we put a recommendation to Cabinet along those lines. And I think the sooner we start talking about it and making it something that people start to look forward to, rather than a duty they're going to want to reject, I think that would be helpful.
I agree with what you're saying, but I'm just trying to work out whether that's directly involved in the contract for food waste and processing. It really is about the contract, Councillor Kerr, so it's probably that sort of dialogue falls outside of this. You know, it's not that I disagree, it's just that I just don't think it fits within.
It's fine, Chair, you're pulling me into line, and that is absolutely
But you've said it. But so the message is out there, but I'm sure you'll be saying it several times in other forums.
I might be. Is it something which that could make a difference within the contract to make sure that we are getting the feedback from the company who's taking our disposal materials, so that there is regular feedback to know how much contamination there is or how many unsuitable things that are going in, so that we have a dialogue at a human level to know how people, and it might be that it's something that we could do that way.
Okay.
Yep. The waste disposal team will be managing this contract, and we will have ongoing dialogue with the successful bidder. We're still in the middle of the procurement process at the moment, but there will be a mobilisation period to that contract once we know who they are. We will work closely with them to build relationships with them. It is a requirement of the contract that we get feedback on and data regarding the quality of the material, the amount of or the presence of material that shouldn't be in there. And we've also asked the potential bidders to sign up to supporting the council in communicating our messages and helping to get residents on board as well. And they're, as part of their the additional things that they can offer us through social responsibility and things like that, they will be happy to, for example, accommodate councillor visits to facilities and things like that. So it's not just a processing contract, there's broader aspirations for it as well.
So I think summing that up just before...
Chair, it sounds as if it's all there already.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, whoever it is hasn't been chosen yet, so we have to assume that that will be the case. But I assume that will be part of the whole dialogue, whoever gets the contract. Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, Councillor Sarah Bolton, Blakery's ward. Yes, we had our neighbourhood forum last week, and we had 2 operatives from Street Pride come to that to take questions and obviously go through the system. I understand this is obviously about the contract, but my concern at the moment, Chair, is are we ready to deliver this contract? Because from my understanding, our new site on the rear of the Stores Road depot is not ready for the new equipment to be stored yet. So my concern is this is going to be run out in the next financial year, but are we ready as a council to deliver the contract as the operatives and the relevant mechanism is in place?
Well, let's ask.
I can't really respond to the queries about the secondary depot. As far as I'm aware, everything is on track there. I know that we are geared up in every way that we can be to deliver the food waste service from the end of March 2026, but I can't go into it. I'm not aware of any further detail on the secondary depot, so I can't respond to that directly.
Okay. But there's a date, so we'll see. Can I just home in on a couple of things which are to do with the contract? A couple of concerns, really, and I'm sure these are going to be shared by fellow councillors, some with some experience of these kind of issues. So, in terms of anaboric, is that the correct term? Anaerobic, sorry, digestion system being used. Is it going to be tightly monitored? Because it has to be. And also, are there going to be like performance indicators, key performance indicators, KPIs, that are going to be fed back to the council about the performance and all of the stats? So it's not a process that we aren't going to be able to scrutinise very closely. And following on from that, will the council consider, say, a break clause if any community nearby where the processing is happening experiences smells, that would really disrupt a local area? That, for me, is a real concern, and I know it's a shared concern from other councillors, that there might be smells that impact on communities on this one. So how are we going to deal with that? And do we have something in the contract that basically says that won't happen? And if it does, then what do we do?
So any facility that we use has to be operated to the highest standards. It has to comply with all best practice, all environmental regulation. They will need to comply with the requirements of the Environment Agency and the regulatory bodies. There are already very high standards set for waste facilities generally. In terms of monitoring, if we became aware of an issue with any facility that we used, we would obviously work closely with that particular service provider. There are KPIs within the contract regarding their performance, which we will be monitoring on a regular basis. And the extensions for the contract will be subject to satisfactory performance. The facility of this kind are really highly regulated. It's impossible to say at the minute the exact operating model that we're going to take. There is a potential that it may just be a transfer station in the local area before waste is moved out of the city, for example, for processing. So at this point in time, we're not able to specifically talk about what the solution will be, because that's not being confirmed yet. But irrespective of that, any waste facility that we work with and we contract with, we will really closely monitor for any nuisance caused. And if there are issues, we will take those up with the service provider.
Obviously, I'm not privy to the contract detail in terms of those. I mean, obviously, it's to be negotiated, isn't it? I suppose with whoever provides this. But I really do feel quite strongly that we do need some kind of break clause or similar to protect a community from any environmental impacts, such as smells. So I do think that's a message that needs to go to Cabinet. I don't know if anyone would second me recommending that to Cabinet. Just to say that the Council should consider a break clause in the contract should AD system cause significant smells or other environmental impacts to a community near the processing site. I think that would be a reasonable consideration for me. I don't know if anyone would support that as a recommendation to Cabinet. Councillor Rawson, you second that? Thank you. So have you captured that, or do you want me to just send a... Yeah, I'll send it through. Yeah. I just think, I'm sure it will be fine, and there'll be many processes in place to avoid that, but I think it's belt and braces that there should be something there. Councillor Kerr.
It's quite an interesting issue, that, because there is food AD plant already in Derby, and as far as I know, it's not causing any issues. And I think a more worrying scenario would be if we have to create a site where we empty all our bin lorries and they then get consolidated into larger lorries for taking elsewhere, because that sort of open plant, or even if it's a covered plant with ventilation, could end up being more of an issue. But we do have, as that thing doesn't exist at the moment, I think we can put it somewhere such as Infinity Park where it won't cause a constant problem to residential areas.
Well, maybe
but
so,
it was something that needs
just,
to be considered.
We just need to make sure, because if there are issues, I think there needs to be a very strong line in that contract that says that we can take measures. Ultimately, if we can work to obviously resolve them, but if they're prolonged and they keep happening, then we need something in the contract, in my view, to actually to break away from it potentially if it is causing significant issues. But that's a glass half empty view of what should be a glass half full, which I'm sure it will be. Okay, are there any other questions on that item? Okay, thank you. Okay, item 11, which is adult social care consultation, direct payments policy for Derby. Mail.
Thank you, Chair. If I pull out key information in the report, Chair. So this is around the Council consulting as part of his adult social care consultation on a direct payments policy for Derby. Direct payments are a familiar way as part of the government's preferred way of personalising care and support. Really essential in that they can provide independence, choice and control by enabling people to buy their own care and support as they see fit rather than relying on the council. It's considered that adults with care and support need would benefit from a single policy document that clearly brings together key information on direct payments. The proposed policy will reconfirm Derby's current approach to direct payments with some proposed changes, mainly to refresh practices and to bring the policy more in line with similar policies in other authorities and in line with the Care Act. The key policy area proposals are in 3 or 4 areas. One is in relation to where individuals may use third-party managed accounts, and that is for the council to put in place arrangements to share direct payment account records for monitoring purposes, and this is in line with the council's duty to monitor direct payment usage to ensure effective use of public funds. Second area is around family members receiving payment for care to use third-party managed accounts providers for managing payments to family members for care. This will be beneficial for the individuals and family members in terms of providing them with support to correctly make payments. Third area is around payment methods and monitoring to encourage use of prepayment cards as the main payment method. Prepayment cards reduce the burden on individuals with care and support as they will not need to regularly provide bank statements to the council. And then the fourth area is around accumulation of funds to allow people to hold up to 4 weeks of contingency funds in their accounts and top up on a 4 weekly basis in that sense. And Chair, further information is set out in the consultation document and in the report. And the recommendations in the report are seeking approval to go out to consultation on the policy in line with that, and then a period of 12-week consultation running from January, and then reporting the outcome of that consultation back to Council Cabinet in May or June next year, with implementation of the policy for July 2026. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. And do we have any questions or queries? Councillor Kerr and then Councillor Wright.
Can I start by saying that I think it's really useful to have it all in one place? But the cover report talks about how to manage, when it's going to be acceptable to carry too much money in your account in 4.20. And I was left not knowing whether, if you've had a short stay in hospital, it means you have to pay back or you don't need to pay back. And in paying back, I actually think we're not paying back. In most cases, we should be just putting a payment on hold. So we don't need to ask for money back. We just need to say, oh, you've already got £800 in your account, and therefore we're not going to pay you the next 400 because you've already got more than a month's spare. And we ought to be able to automate that. So, and I think that small change of how we would do it going into the policy would actually be quite helpful, because asking people to give money back immediately feels sort of threatening in my view, whereas to say you've got enough money and we don't need to give you any more is not as threatening. And I think it's in practice the way we should be handling it. So I don't know if that is something that could be taken away and thought about. The other point in the policy that I think we may need to think about again is we've given a phone number, 660 777, and it takes you through to Darcy on the main Darcy board, and how easy it's going to be for someone to get from there to the right bit and persuade Darcy that they I want to request an assessment of need by, you know, from you, can you put me through to the right person, please, might not be as easy. I didn't try it, I only went through on the phone number. But if we could give some more precise information as to what we asked Darcy, and to make sure that Darcy understands that, I think would be more helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just some good conversation and points there. Just in relation to accumulation of funds, it's a tricky area because it can run into a range of detailed payment methodologies in effect. So because there can be multiple reasons for an accumulation of funds, and you're striking that fine balance between not appearing threatening to take money away, but also being pragmatic around if a customer individual has been in hospital and hasn't used those funds for a period of time, or it could be in relation to timing of invoices that a customer third party may or may not have received. So looking at the Care Act, looking at research we've done, it's by no way of trying to be threatening in any way, but the simplest methodologies that councils are using is to ensure almost an accumulation of 8 weeks worth of funds, so paid on a 4-weekly cycle, dealing with timing of payments being made out and ensuring there's enough of a buffer, and looking at some of the detailed information on accumulation of funds. Sometimes these funds can be quite significant as they accumulate. So there isn't one size that fits all is probably what I'm saying, Chair. So it is definitely not trying to be threatening, but trying to find a workable solution across 900 customers with over probably 3,000 different types of transactions in relation to the various care plans that sit underneath that. So that's a long-winded way of kind of saying we've tried to come up with this solution that's the most pragmatic for everybody concerned, that the customer has enough money in there, but definitely not trying to be threatening anyway, but trying to find a solution. And we're happy to keep that under review. And Chair, just for assurance, the process that's outlined here is actually quite consistent with what most councils are using. And then the second bit, I can take that away to have a look at when we do the consultation, the information in terms of Darcy, is that secure enough and working effectively, Chair?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point because the AI, if somebody is desperate to communicate with a human being to actually explain the situation or chase up a concern that they have or an issue, it is important for that AI process to be tested and have that learning model so that they can actually get through the system and not feel frustrated or not able to get through to get the answer they need. So yeah, I'm very keen. Councillor Kerr makes a very good point there, that we really do need to test that system with real world examples of somebody trying to get through on a specific point to make sure that they actually are successful, or at least they can make contact with someone or able to leave some details so that they get contacted them back themselves from an actual human rather than just AI. Some queries, it may be that the AI can actually refer them to information that they need, and that's all that'd be fine. But sometimes these things can be quite complex and people can be quite worried about a certain situation which is unique to them. And we do need to work through that system and not just assume that Darcy is perfect and will be able to do everything at this stage. I'm sure in 10 years' time it probably will be able to, but right now it does need to be closely monitored. Councillor Kerr.
It's quite interesting. One of the queries that I've previously raised about Darcy is the speed at which Darcy talks. And some people find that she talks too fast and they can't comprehend what they're saying because they've got they're elderly or they've got slight hearing loss. And that is going to be something that could be quite important on this sort of query. But coming back to 12.6 in the policy document, this is where it says, if there is a regular or excess build-up of funds, it may indicate a change in care and support needs and a reassessment could be required. Absolutely right. If on reassessment, repayment is due to the council, it says the council will seek to recover funds. And I think it should say first, the council will reduce payments until funds are recovered, rather than actually having to do that refund directly there and then paying the right amount. Because that's the way, you know, HMRC does it. If you've got a tax issue, they don't suddenly ask you for, you know, £2,000 because you've been underspent. They take it off in the future. And I think that's the way we should be able to handle it as well.
Gamal?
Chair, I can't really add more than what I've already added. In effect, I hear what you're suggesting, and certainly yourselves as scrutiny to make a recommendation on that point. What we're trying to do, without kind of getting into numerous details, is that it is quite a sort of micro process that runs around accumulation of funds, and the key aim is always to ensure there are enough funds there, and therefore what we don't want to unintentionally create is a movement of, oh, it's £100 excess, so therefore we're going to reduce next month, and then make sure the system has then updated it again to ensure that the following month that is reverted back to the kind of top-up payment. So the process, as I say, outlined in the consultation document, and it's for yourselves to make recommendation, feels a much neater process whereby there is always going to be sufficient funds. There's always going to be almost an 8-week buffer, and therefore, in effect, what we're doing is always minimising taking them out that where there's been an accumulation. So that's the proposal, rather than trying to introduce something across, as I say, 900 accounts. But as I say, again, those 900 accounts, each care plan can go into 5 different areas around care support and other aspects. And so I do hear what you're suggesting, but in terms of the technical solution to be able to make it happen, feels like the most simplest solution would be to allow sufficient funds, accumulation of funds, then the council being satisfied that the 8-week buffer is still, and there's an example in the report that kind of outlines that. But I hear what you're saying, and yourselves to make a recommendation if you so wish.
Well, maybe not a recommendation, but Councillor Kerr, I mean, would you be willing to sort of put those into the consultation? Would that be good enough for yourself?
I just made something that could be a recommendation, but I'm just concerned that I may not remember to do the consultation response.
Okay, so do you want to put something forward?
So I've said to recommend that Cabinet to explore whether overpayment of direct payment funds can be managed by a reduction in payments until the overpayment has been removed, rather than asking for repayment.
Does that seem reasonable to you, Gamal? If we, do you think that's a reasonable recommendation? Just your advice on that?
I wouldn't want to recommend you on your recommendations.
No, I mean, is it potentially doable? Whether the Cabinet agree to it or not, but I mean, is it something which seems reasonable? I don't think it's doable as a process. I think it will add more issues into play than it's seeking to solve. So therefore, it's highly unlikely Cabinet will. I mean, I don't mind if you put it out there for a second to Councillor Kerr, but
I think, Chair, that it's something that Finance need to be asked about, because they will understand whether or not it's something that is capable within their existing IT system, and it might replicate something that they've already got, or it may be an easy add-on to that system, which is quite new and modern. And I think that from the point of view of an individual who has maybe been in hospital, come out again, and has got a bit too much money there, it would happen invisibly to them, because it would be something that would happen in the background. And I think they would just get a notification to say, we have done this, rather than them having to do anything. And that might be simpler for people than to actually have to manage a repayment. So if it can be achieved, I think it would be a benefit to people in Derby, and probably the council as well. If it can't be achieved, so be it.
So I'm just trying to help out, really. We haven't got a second yet, but just my point is, hence asking, it's highly unlikely that that in my view, would be agreed by Cabinet. So I'm just trying to find a pathway for it to be considered, and what would the best way for you to actually raise that point, rather than it just being a recommendation potentially just to be dismissed and then never go any further?
I've said to recommend to Cabinet to explore whether overpayment of direct payment funds can be managed by a reduction in payments. And I've said explore it because they need to ask finance.
All right, fine. I'll second that for you, but just be aware that you may have to pursue it in other means. I'm not very confident, but we can send it. If you can send that to Stephen. I'll second it. Are we agreed? I agree with you. There really seems to be an objection. Okay. All right, we'll do that one. Any other comments, questions, queries, Councillor Wright?
Yeah, it's an associated issue around overpayments where somebody eligibility goes for whatever reason because of change in the circumstances. I've had a case where those payments have carried on beyond the time they should have been, and that's created more distress. The council wanted to get the money back. I'm assuming this process will largely eradicate that issue in the future.
Yes, Chair, it will do. It's difficult to say absolutely, but the work that's underway on strengthening adult social care systems and procedures will begin to take some of those anomalies kind of away, because there could be a number of factors, as you've described, that have resulted in those payments. For example, a notification for change in circumstances, or sadly somebody has passed away, hasn't come through to the system because a trigger on the system wasn't there, or the council wasn't aware quickly enough. But certainly there's a lot of work going on in order to ensure systems are talking to one another, notifications coming through, and therefore there's a speedier change where need be. And I think the prepayment card system will make that a lot more efficient than it is at the moment.
Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. Item 12, adoption of planning performance agreement with Rolls-Royce.
Thank you, Chair. I will run through the main points within the report. Essentially, the purpose of the report is to seek approval and to enter into a planning performance agreement with Rolls-Royce to support the delivery of their expansion plans at the Rainsway site. This is a project of strategic importance to Rolls-Royce, given their recent number of contracts and agreements they have with UK government and other governments, which have necessitated an expansion at the Rainsway plant. Outline planning was granted in 2024 for the project, and there are a number of reserved matters applications and other applications required in order to deliver the master plan. So far to date in 2025, 37 applications have already been submitted and determined, and we anticipate a significant volume of around 400 required to support the full delivery of the master plan over the coming years. The proposal is therefore to enter into a planning performance agreement. Planning performance agreements were first introduced around 2008-2010 and were specifically referenced in the MPPF in 2012 as a mechanism to get better collaboration and engagement on complex planning applications and provide some certainty and decrease the risk around the application process. The planning performance agreements are not routinely used in Derby, but they are used by planning authorities across the country as a mechanism for setting out the timetable and the process by which planning is undertaken, planning applications are submitted, and provides a level of certainty to planning authorities in order to make sure resources are available for the determination of planning applications. It doesn't fetter the planning process, and it ensures, but it does ensure that the resources are in place in order to consider those planning applications as they come forward. The proposed planning performance agreement in this case will cover the cost of additional resourcing to achieve key milestones within the planning team itself and within the environmental protection team, given the volume of applications that are likely to come forward. I'm happy to take any questions at that point.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Kerr.
It's not so much a question, but I think this is something that we need to be welcoming, because without additional resource, it's not going to be just Rolls-Royce that would be suffering. It would be also the delivery of any other planning application in the city because of capacity within the department. So I welcome this route forward to be able to give us the capacity to be able to deliver the service that we want to provide.
Yeah, and it's important that we obviously recognise and support Rolls-Royce for national defence and global defence. You know, UK now with the USA and Australian governments, it's vital, and we very much enjoy the economic benefits of Rolls-Royce being in the city, and that long may that continue. So I certainly welcome this. Should we put a recommendation? Councillor Rawson, you're very good at positive recommendations. Do you want to put something forward for Cabinet? Put you on the spot there?
Yes. Yes, as Councillor Kerr said, to very much welcome this this proposal in terms not only of the support that can be offered to Rolls-Royce in assisting with our applications going forward, but also to, as has been said, to ensure that we deal efficiently with other planning applications that are coming through the system as well. So I'd propose that we welcome it for those reasons.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kerr, would you be able to sum that up and send it on an email for me? It's not fair to Councillor Rawson to do it, but Stephen's probably
But wasn't
got
Stephen taking shorthand?
that. Probably. Are we happy to sum that up, Stephen? Capture that. No problem. Do you want to second that, Councillor Kerr? Agreed? Excellent. Keeping you all on your toes. Thank you very much. Over the page. Item 13, compliance with contract and financial procedure rules.
Hello, thank you, Chair. This is a report on behalf of Tony Nash. It's compliance with contract and financial procedure rules, purpose of which is to accept a grant from the MHCLG of just over £930,000, which is a top-up grant with the purpose of addressing rough sleeping, prevention and street homelessness. So the recommendations is to approve the acceptance of the MHCLG Rough Sleeping Prevention and Recovery Grant as outlined in 4.1. Also worth noting 2.2 to delegate approval to the Strategic Director of Place following consultation with the Section 151 officer and the Cabinet Member for Housing to agree the final terms and arrangements for the spending of the top-up grant. And then 2.3 is to note the continuation of the arrangement with Derby Homes in line with the 2021 Partnership Agreement for the delivery and management of housing options and homelessness services in line with the grant conditions outlined by the MHCLG. And as I say, the reason for this is to comply with contract and financial procedure rules. MHCLG provided quite a clear framework as to around what that funding could be used for, and as I say, it's around rough sleeping and single homelessness.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Councillor Kerr.
I'm really pleased that we've received this extra funding because I think it's something that Derby has done really well recently. But can you share a bit more as to how we would anticipate this funding being used?
Certainly. Just to give you a rough idea, before we have to go back to the MHCLG with how we're proposing to spend the money in any event. So we're looking at strengthening some of our initiatives, particularly in the lead up into winter, around the provision of off-street accommodation in the form of a night shelter. So we're currently doing a test of concept and then funds have been earmarked for the commissioning of that moving forward. We're looking to strengthen around single homeless discharge from hospital. We were also looking to fund ongoing funding for a social worker working specifically with the rough sleeper cohort. And we're also looking at using the grant to shore up incentives in the private rented sector in order that we can access that market and obviously discharge our duties through the PRS sector in light of lack of social housing properties. And there's also other bits around personal budgets that we're looking to fund out of that pot as well.
Councillor Wright.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Does this also include provision to families and children? So families do not have permanent accommodation with children. Thank you.
So there was a separate top-up grant for children living in TA. So the RSPOG funding was the single homelessness and rough sleeping. And then there was a separate top-up grant that we received that wasn't subject to the same rules, that was for supporting children in temporary accommodation.
Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think any more money coming into the city by our government is to be welcomed. It's just a shame that it has to be spent in this way. It's a shame in this century that we do have people sleeping rough and are homeless, and I think that's a sorry state I'm sure none of us would want to have to deal with in society. Obviously, I welcome it, and my thoughts are, and I think I might have lost the plot here a little bit, as to who provides the housing for homeless. It used to be Padley, YMCA. I was wondering if I could just have a quick brief on who will be providing the services. Obviously, I understand the Derby Homes connection, but who actually will be dealing with them?
Okay.
In respect of, there's a variety of providers in the city. So there is local authority-owned temporary accommodation. We also work with a network of supported housing providers. So you mentioned the YMCA, we also work at Devonshire, Action Housing, also work with us. And as I say, we also place into the private rented sector. So there's not, as far as if we're thinking around the night shelter, I think perhaps in the past people have considered the offer at Padley. Obviously in the city we have Safe Space, so that's a partnership project that's delivered with DCM, Derby City Mission. We obviously also work with other hostels such as Centenary House, we have Milestone House. So there's a range of different property types to meet the needs of homeless and rough sleepers. But there isn't just one provider of that. It's a variety, and offering different pathways as well, so varying different levels of need. And some of those are partnerships between ourselves and the voluntary sector.
One bullet point, put plans in place in advance of winter 25-26. Well, we're in winter now, so how quickly will this grant actually take effect and have the desired support that we need for homeless?
So this grant doesn't affect any plans that we make for our severe weather provision in any event. As I say, what it's enabled us to do is a test of concept on the night shelter. So that's an off-the-street accommodation offer. And that is specifically for those with low or no support needs. So anybody with assessed as having a certain level of support needs, we have those existing housing pathways to go into. I mentioned Safe Space. But obviously we are increasingly seeing people with low or no support needs, and we need a proportionate and appropriate off-the-street accommodation offer for those. So this is in addition to any winter planning. It will just enable us to enhance that.
Thank you. I think I put forward a recommendation to Cabinet that the board welcomes the grant and the support it will provide. Councillor Wright, would you like to second that? Okay. Excellent. Good. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on then. I believe it's the pink papers, as I call them. Let's have a look. Yes, it is. So, do you want me to say it, or move it as printed, if that's legal, and we'll move to closed session?